The difference between those who are constantly manipulated and humiliated by liars and those who completely dominate them lies in a truth that separates the strong from the weak. You need to know the exact responses. Napoleon Hill, the man who spent 2 decades interviewing more than 500 millionaires and discovered the secrets of personal power, revealed exactly 5 responses that transform any confrontation with a liar into your guaranteed victory. And you'll master all of them in the next few minutes. If you've ever felt that devastating sensation of helplessness when someone lied to your face and you remained silent, if you've ever left a conversation knowing you were deceived but couldn't prove it, then you need to understand that this ends today. The problem wasn't you. It was that no one ever taught you how true masters of personal power unmask manipulators and completely reverse the control dynamic. Napoleon Hill spent decades studying not just how successful people think, but how they protect themselves, how they transform manipulation attempts into power demonstrations, how they make liars expose themselves completely, losing all credibility in front of witnesses. The first thing you need to understand is that liars operate with predictable patterns and exploit exactly 3 weaknesses: your upbringing, your tendency to be polite, and your fear of creating conflict. But when you master Napoleon Hill's 5 responses that I'm going to teach you now, you completely reverse this dynamic in seconds. You become the one who controls the conversation, the one who exposes the truth without accusing anyone, the one who transforms liars into evidence against themselves. First response: interesting. Can you repeat exactly what you just said? What you might be in mind. This simple question is devastating because it forces the liar into 2 impossible choices. Either they repeat the lie exactly the same, which is psychologically very difficult because lies don't have the consistency of truth, or they change some detail, immediately revealing their dishonesty. Think of memory as a digital file versus an improvised painting. Napoleon Hill discovered that the human mind has extreme difficulty replicating false information with precision. Truth is like a file, stable, it doesn't change. But lies are paintings created on the spot. They depend on creativity in the moment. When you force an immediate repetition, you're testing whether it's a file or improvisation. What makes this response even more powerful is its apparent innocence. You're not accusing anyone of lying. You're simply asking for clarification. This prevents the liar from playing victim or deflecting focus. They can't say you're being aggressive. They can only repeat, and that's where the lie begins to crumble. Great leaders like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison constantly used this technique in negotiations. When someone presented dubious numbers or made vague promises, they simply asked for repetition. It was incredible how quickly information began to change, revealing dishonesty. Second response: what specific evidence do you have to support that? This is the nuclear weapon against liars because it transforms the conversation from opinion to facts. Liars love operating in the realm of generalities, impressions, and vague truths that can't be verified. But when you demand specific evidence, you drag them into territory where they can no longer hide. It's like dragging someone from the shadows into the spotlight. The beauty of this response is that it forces the liar to choose between admitting they have no evidence, destroying their credibility, or inventing evidence that can be easily verified and disproven. Either way, you win. Napoleon Hill observed that truly successful people always base their statements on verifiable facts. They never fear this question because they have real data to support their words. Liars, on the other hand, become visibly uncomfortable when they need to present concrete evidence. What you're doing here isn't just exposing a specific lie. You're establishing a standard. You're showing that you operate at a higher level of precision and honesty. You're sending a clear message. With me, you can't just make things up. Industrialists like Andrew Carnegie use this strategy to disarm dishonest competitors in business meetings. When someone made claims about production capacity or financial resources, Carnegie simply asked for specific numbers. It was fascinating how quickly people changed the subject or admitted they were estimating. But here's where things get truly interesting. While the first 2 responses test the consistency of the lie, the third response doesn't attack the lie directly. It attacks the liar's credibility in a much more subtle and devastating way. Third response: that's fascinating. Who else knows about this? This question is brilliant because it forces the liar to choose between expanding their network of dishonesty risking being contradicted by third parties, or admitting that their information is isolated and unverifiable. It's a perfect psychological trap. Imagine a house of cards. When someone is telling the truth, this question is easy to answer. They can mention colleagues, superiors, documents, sources. Honest people aren't afraid of others confirming their words. Their truth is a solid foundation. But liars panic because they know that any external verification will make their house of cards collapse. What makes this response even more effective is that it appears to show genuine interest. You seem to want to know more to expand your understanding. The liar cannot defend against this without appearing defensive and suspicious. They are forced to play the game to the end. Napoleon Hill noticed that great negotiators like J.P. Morgan always asked these questions when evaluating investment opportunities. Who else is involved? Who can confirm these numbers? What other companies are doing similar business? It was a way to verify information without directly accusing anyone of dishonesty. The beauty of these first three responses is that they work in sequence or in isolation. Each one is an independent tool of power, but together they create an impenetrable defense against manipulation. You become the person that liars learn to avoid, because they know they cannot operate around you. Wait until you discover what comes next. These three responses are just the foundation, like learning the basic moves of chess. The real power, the one that transforms you from defender to conqueror, the one that makes liars bow before your presence, lies in the final two responses that Napoleon Hill considered his secret weapons. These last two responses don't just expose liars, they destroy them psychologically. They completely reverse the power dynamic, making you the one who controls not just the conversation, but the very reality of the situation. These are techniques that the most powerful businessmen and leaders in history used to never allow anyone to manipulate them. The fourth response reveals the temporal inconsistency that every liar carries with them. The fifth response is devastating because it transforms the liar themselves into evidence against themselves. Together, they create a complete transformation in the power dynamic that will forever change how you are perceived and respected. But to understand how to apply these two final responses with maximum effectiveness, first you need to comprehend the deep psychology behind manipulation and how Napoleon Hill discovered the blind spots that every liar possesses. And now we arrive at the moment that separates basic knowledge from true mastery. You have already mastered the first three responses that Napoleon Hill identified as essential for any confrontation. But the great visionaries of history understood something deeper. There is a level of mastery that goes far beyond simply defending against liars. It transforms you into someone others instinctively respect. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who settle for mediocrity isn't just in facing obstacles, it's in transforming those obstacles into springboards for unparalleled power. Response 4. The power of strategic perspective. Napoleon Hill observed something fascinating in the great industrialists of his era. When Henry Ford faced the greatest criticism about his assembly line, when Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before creating the light bulb, when the Wright brothers were ridiculed for dreaming of human flight, they all applied the same fundamental response. They didn't see problems as problems. They saw them as valuable information about the path to success. It was as if each obstacle was a GPS recalculating the route, not a blockage but guidance. The fourth response is this. Every obstacle carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater opportunity. Think about this for a moment. When you face resistance, when someone says it's impossible, when circumstances seem to work against you at that exact moment, you are receiving privileged information about where others gave up. You are discovering unexplored territories where competition is lower and rewards are greater. I know an entrepreneur who was rejected by 47 investors before finding the 48th who said yes. Each no wasn't a defeat, it was market research on how to perfect his pitch. That 48th investor funded what became a billion-dollar company. This perspective isn't just philosophical, it's strategic. Today's great entrepreneurs, like Napoleon Hill's visionaries of the past, have developed the ability to transform every no into data about how to find the definitive yes. But here's the secret that few understand. This perspective needs to be deliberately cultivated. It doesn't happen automatically. It's a mental discipline that you develop through specific practice. Every time you face a difficulty, Ask yourself 3 questions. What opportunity is this situation revealing to me? What skill is this experience forcing me to develop? How can I use this resistance to become stronger than I was before? These questions reprogram your mind to see possibilities where others see only problems. This is how you develop what Napoleon Hill called the abundance mindset, the ability to find value in any circumstance. Response 5. The law of fear transmutation. And we arrive at the most powerful response of all. The response that Napoleon Hill considered the definitive differentiator between those who live extraordinary lives and those who remain in the comfort zone of mediocrity. This 5th response goes beyond facing fear. It teaches you to use fear as fuel for your greatness. Napoleon Hill discovered something revolutionary. Fear and excitement are chemically identical in the human body. The difference lies only in the interpretation your mind gives to the experience. When you feel that knot in your stomach, that racing heart, that tension, you're not feeling fear. You're feeling pure power waiting to be directed. It's like being on a roller coaster. That same gut feeling can be terror or pure excitement. The only difference is how you choose to interpret that sensation. The 5th response is, transform the energy of fear into the energy of decisive action. The great leaders Napoleon Hill studied weren't fearless people. They were people who learned to recognize fear as a signal that they were moving in the right direction. When Ford was betting everything on mass production, when Edison was investing his reputation in each experiment, when Carnegie was expanding his business beyond what was considered safe, they all felt fear. But they developed a skill that transformed their lives, the ability to interpret fear as excitement, as available energy, as fuel for immediate action. Here's how to apply this in practice. The next time you feel fear when facing an opportunity, an important decision, or a significant challenge, stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and tell yourself, this energy I'm feeling is my body preparing for greatness. This is the sensation of growth happening. I remember an Olympic sprinter who told me, before every race I get those same butterflies. But I learned to interpret that as, my body is firing up for peak performance. So use that energy immediately. Don't wait for the fear to pass. Channel that energy into the action you know you need to take. That's how you transform what paralyzes most people into what propels you forward. Napoleon Hill called this transmutation, the alchemical ability to transform one energy into another. And when you master this skill, there's no limit to what you can achieve. And now we reach the moment that changes everything. You have just mastered exactly what Napoleon Hill promised at the beginning, the 5 responses that separate those who are constantly manipulated from those who maintain complete control in any confrontation with deceptive people. Now you possess something most people will never have, the complete arsenal of responses that true visionaries use to transform any situation into an opportunity for growth. You have the first response, the courage to face what is difficult. The second, the strategic persistence that transforms obstacles into stepping stones. The third, the unshakable confidence in your ability to adapt and grow. The fourth, the perspective that finds opportunities where others see only problems. And the fifth, the mastery of transforming fear into fuel for action. This isn't just theoretical knowledge, it's a system tested by decades of Napoleon Hill's research and validated by generations of people who went from mediocrity to excellence. But here's the truth. Napoleon Hill discovered in his 2 decades of research that can change everything for you. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. The difference between you today and you 6 months from now won't be determined by what you learned here, but by how many times you applied these 5 responses in your real life. The great visionaries Napoleon Hill studied had one characteristic in common. They didn't wait until they felt ready. They didn't postpone until they had all the answers. They applied what they learned immediately, even imperfectly, because they understood that imperfect action is always superior to paralyzed perfection. Each of these 5 pillars is strengthened through practice. Every time you choose to face instead of avoid, every time you persist instead of give up, every time you trust instead of doubt, every time you find opportunity instead of problems, every time you act instead of hesitate, you're building the character that transforms dreams into reality. And here's what excites me most. You don't need to wait for great opportunities to start. You can start today, right now, with the next small decision you need to make. It could be making that call you've been postponing, starting that project you've put on the back burner, or simply positioning yourself differently before the next challenge that appears. Greatness isn't a matter of extraordinary circumstances. It's a matter of extraordinary responses to ordinary circumstances. And now you have those responses. Napoleon Hill spent more than 20 years of his life studying the secrets of success because he deeply believed that each person has the potential to create an extraordinary life. He didn't do this research to create an elite class of privileged individuals. He did it so that people like you could have access to the same principles that transformed the poor into millionaires, unknowns into leaders, dreamers into achievers. Your moment of decision. And now we reach the most important moment of this entire process. The moment when you decide not just to absorb this information, but to become someone who lives it. Here's the truth. You can watch 1,000 YouTube videos about swimming, read hundreds of books on technique, study the theory for years, but you only become a swimmer when you actually get in the pool. In the same way, you only become someone who truly possesses these 5 responses when you start applying them to your reality, to your challenges, your opportunities, your unique circumstances. The question that Napoleon Hill asked every person he mentored was simple but transformative. What action will you take today that proves to yourself that you are different? This question is not rhetorical. It's an invitation for you to leave this moment transformed, not just informed. Maybe it's finally launching that startup you've been planning. Maybe it's having that tough conversation you've been putting off. Maybe it's enrolling in that program, taking that trip, or simply changing how you handle daily pressures. What matters is not the size of the action, but the quality of the decision behind it. When you act on what you've learned, when you deliberately apply one of these 5 responses in real life, you shift from being a content consumer to being a results creator. And here's something we only discover when we start applying these principles. Each action based on these responses generates a confidence that no theory can provide. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you have proven tools to handle any situation life throws at you. If you recognize the transformative power of these 5 responses from Napoleon Hill, if you want to continue developing this mindset that separates the strong from the weak, subscribe to the channel. Because those who master these techniques never again allow themselves to be manipulated. And this is just the beginning of a journey that can literally reverse the power dynamics in your life. And in the comments, I want you to do more than just watch. Tell me which of these 5 responses you're going to test first. Which situation in your life do you intend to transform using these techniques? Because when you publicly commit to your transformation, you've already begun to apply the power that Napoleon Hill discovered in the most successful people in history. Remember, you now possess what Napoleon Hill considered the most valuable treasure in the world, the 5 exact responses that transform you from someone who gets manipulated into someone who completely dominates any confrontation. Don't keep this treasure stored away. Use it, live it. Become the person that liars learn to avoid, because the world doesn't need another person who knows about these techniques. The world needs another person who masters them in practice. And that person can be you, starting with the very next liar who tries to deceive you.